Hello everyone, welcome to the Burn After Watching podcast for Monday, July 25th, 2016. This is episode number 38, and I'm your host, Jody.
I'm your host, Reed.
I'm your host, Mark.
And Harrison's here again.
Woo! Of course.
I'm here.
Welcome back, Harrison.
Thanks.
All right.
It's okay to be here.
Oh, that's nice to know.
It's always okay to have you here.
Just want to make that clear as well.
I'm really okay with this.
On today's show, we're going to be discussing Tickled, new documentary. Very interesting movie, has a pretty big reputation for being the movie about tickling fetish.
Aside from the documentary that's about nuts that also came out this year.
Well,
yeah.
People are weirdly, in my experience, avoiding Tickled. Like, they're all like, oh, it's that movie. But, like, no one's going to see it.
I think they're fascinated by it, but do not actually want to go out of their way to see it, I think.
It seems like a movie that'll really thrive on Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
okay.
Certainly, yeah.
In the privacy of their homes.
Right. Where they can squirm all they want on their couch. Right?
Nobody wants to make eye contact after having watched this movie, walking out of the theater.
Let's just say I tried to tickle my fiance and she wasn't having it.
Okay. That's okay, Harrison.
It was not fine.
I'm fine with this.
What you said is fine.
All right.
All that's
so,
getting cut.
Are we doing picks this week? We probably should have sorted that before the show started.
yeah, assuming
we're doing picks.
always
Okay,
picks.
so do we have a clip from Tickled?
Here's a clip. I'm just kidding.
You know, I was like, okay, the military is going to use tickling as a torture tactic.
A dude in New Zealand, a reporter, happened across this Facebook page.
Some sort of organized sport of tickling.
When did the video come back to get you?
About a year, maybe a little more. It said, your family better watch out, direct threats.
We're shooting a documentary.
I understand what you think you're doing.
I don't think that you're going to be able to find the answers that you're looking for.
Just walk away from it.
Unless we stop the doco, we're going to be
Unless you stop, we all are.
Jane O'Brien's a ghost. Nobody knows who it is.
But there must be a way to find out, surely.
Not here.
Tickled, rated R. Journalist David Ferrier stumbles upon a mysterious tickling competition online. As he delves deeper, he comes up against fierce resistance, but that doesn't stop him from getting to the bottom of a story stranger than fiction. It's a documentary. It stars journalist, entertainment journalist.
Yes.
Didn't they use a different term?
Pop culture.
Pop culture,
There you go.
yeah.
Pop culture journalist David Ferrier, a New Zealand, no less, New Zealand pop culture journalist David Ferrier, and Dylan Reeve, which
They also both directed it,
Yes.
correct?
yes, directing, starring. There's a point in this film where George Michael gets strapped to a table and tickled. Wait, that's
what?
not. It's not George Michael. I'm kidding.
Okay.
What do you guys think of Tickled?
Jody?
Well, I'm trying to think where we should start with this one. I guess we should address the first time we're doing a documentary on the show. We were pretty excited about doing one.
But we have talked about Making a Murderer.
True.
That's
but
true.
We
yes.
pretty much spoiled the hell out of that, right?
Yeah, we kind of
Assuming-
assumed that everyone should have seen it. But yeah, so I guess in a way we have taken on doing a documentary.
But this will be different because we're not assuming that everyone's seen it.
Exactly, and we're going to try to not spoil things. And with this being a investigative journalistic expose thing, it's kind of hard. It's actually a documentary where you don't want to spoil some of the things
because a lot of the movie kind of, and how you enjoy it, kind of rides on the surprises and the twists and turns that it takes. Yeah, so it's very this movie, it starts out, I'm just going to go into very light detail. It starts out as David Ferrier coming across a video of these young men tickling each other.
and this guy lives all the way in New Zealand.
Yes.
He's a pop culture reporter there.
Yeah, and these are American teens or 20-year-olds, and he just starts investigating it. He finds the media group, Jane O'Brien Media, the producers of the underground competitive tickling organization, or seemingly so.
It's marketed as a sport as well.
Yes.
Yeah, it's based in Los Angeles on the site, their YouTube page or whatever it is.
It insists on
And
calling itself a sport.
It's a Facebook page with like 22,000 likes, and he starts out just wanting to talk to them about it. He doesn't look at this as some kind of conspiracy or something. He just looks at it as like, I want to actually talk to these people who run this.
Right. You can imagine he stumbled upon this and was like, oh, this would make a great little like 15-minute news segment.
Yeah, all you got to do is watch like one clip or one video and you're like, what?
You're intrigued.
And we're given some information about his past journalistic ventures, and he just tends to pick like strange stories about things, and I guess this just made him curious. So.
Yeah, and
pretty lightweight stuff too. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to say he's not a good journalist, but like he's doing pop culture stuff, so it's not
very
super
online
serious.
driven pop culture sort of journalism. And anyway, so he seeks out these people. He I forget if he comments on their Facebook page or something, like, hey, I'm David Ferrier, is it?
Yeah.
And I would, like to interview you, just find out more about this competitive endurance tickling. And he gets all of this homophobic messages.
It starts out with them saying they don't want to associate with a homosexual journalist, and then the way the film is edited, it just like progressively cuts to deeper and deeper things, and the last one is like calling him a faggot. And that's
what was really weird is that it's this media group that he reaches out to is instantly defensive.
They assumed he was out to judge them.
Right. Yeah.
Create a sinister angle on the story and make them look bad.
This is really kind of the first red flag to fly up, because this on the page, it makes it look like it's a legitimate like production company or something, and I don't know any actual legitimate company that would respond to something with like just so obviously out to get someone. So
slanderous.
Exactly.
Emails,
yeah, it's very unprofessional. It feels more like a personal attack than something coming from a company.
Right. After they get this weird attack through email, they start getting all these legal warnings and legal opposition. He's getting notices from the United States. He's getting notices from lawyers in courts in New Zealand.
So it appears Jane O'Brien has not only hired lawyers in the United States, but also in New Zealand.
This wall of opposition of all kinds of personal attacks and legal attacks. And they make it seem like, even though you're watching the movie on screen, there's no way it can be taken off the air. I kind of felt like for parts of it that it was on the verge of not being released. Right, because they were stepping on so many toes.
There's like parts where they confront people, and it is like I thought it was a little thrilling at times.
Yes,
like a few scenes, when they're confronting people, and I found that really interesting. And I thought that was a cool part of the documentary. I don't have a lot to say about that, but it was interesting. You do feel like you're being included in something unique.
How everything unfolds is very exciting, and I think that's one of the best parts about the film, is that you get to watch everything just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper until we start finding out who some of these sources are. And I think that's one of the best aspects of the film, especially as a journalistic expose, for lack of better terms.
Oh yeah, they go into you have this Jane O'Brien media group, and you're not sure if it's one person or several people, and then of course they go a little bit into the tickling scene and find other characters within the fetish and within these types of videos.
Actually, I think they spend a lot of time.
I was hoping for more, which maybe I'll get into later as we talk about other things. But so you're just revealing all these characters, and a lot of them are online entities or personalities. And so for me, it was kind of like, I don't know if you guys ever saw Catfish, the movie. I've never seen. I guess it spawned a TV show, but the Catfish was about these guys who ended up. Or I guess a guy who ends up getting involved with this woman online, and she has I don't know if she runs a blog or whatever, but portrays this whole persona of like things she does. She has pictures, and they talk on the phone, I think, and of course they chat online and email back and forth and stuff. And he eventually sets out to actually find this person. I think actually something happens. She says something, or he finds something online that tips him off that this person might not be who they say they are. And of course, that kind of stuff is all over Tickled. It's just like weird questions, and it has this also big, like Catfish is just about two kids basically going on a road trip to try and find this person they've been chatting with. But the story comes to David in New Zealand from the United States. in the form of what appear to be lawyers, who get put up in a nice hotel, who want to have a private meeting and talk about the situation. And he goes, one of the greatest scenes I thought was him going to meet them at the airport when they're arriving in New Zealand.
That had it had a really kind of absurd humor to it, like Nathan For You. You've been watching Nathan For You, but it's got an absurd humor like that, I think.
This spins out of control so fast, from a little online article that he's thinking about to it just blows up. And I guess we don't want to go too deep into it because a lot of the joy is how it unfolds.
Well, and I think he's very aware of that because he had already at this point decided to make the documentary. So he's already, decided, this is bigger than me just doing one of my online pieces. This is probably going to be.
I think it's a pretty smart decision. Very
Did you guys,
very wise on his behalf.
Did you guys get the feeling, though, that, some things, speaking of the airport scene, since it's near the beginning, I don't feel it's too spoilery, but some elements of it were, since they had decided to make a film, do you think some things they did here were in the interest of kind of making it a better movie? Is there anything wrong with that?
I think the airport scene for sure is one that's like almost solely entertainment based. Yeah, because it does. It's fairly confrontational to the opposing lawyers.
I'm actually really glad you pointed that out. That was something that kind of rubbed me the wrong way a couple times in the movie. Is it felt like it was more in service to the movie than what he's actually trying to capture. I guess a lot more of those moments were when he was doing some of the interviews or with some of these people who have been caught up in this ring of tickling.
Well, he starts to kind of delve into the actual fetish of tickling, as like a foot fetish, but just tickling in general. And he ends up meeting with someone who is more of an expert in the fetish, and they spend some time with him and a client where they actually do some tickling.
And this is like in Orlando, Florida, and this guy's very legitimate. It's not like Jane O'Brien. This guy is like very public about him being the person who does this. And he's made an entire career around, something he has a fetish for. And he talks about it in a very positive way, not in a harmful kind of way that we're kind of seeing with the Jane O'Brien media.
Right, the opposite is Jane O'Brien. It's literally quite the opposite.
Exactly.
He's just kind of upfront. He wants to do the interview. He wants to show them what it's like on set, which that's a whole monster in itself.
Yes.
But Jane O'Brien is like the opposite. She just wants to bully people and we get really kind of horrifying facts about what Jane O'Brien media has done.
It feels like much more of a power trip.
They are weirdly ashamed and just like lash out so defensively about anyone who's trying to discredit isn't the right word, but just like drawing any attention whatsoever. They just like hate it. And whereas this guy in Orlando just completely acknowledges that it's it's a fetish, it's a taste, and it's not for everyone, but it is just like anything else, and there's nothing inherently shameful about it. Whereas this Jane O'Brien and a lot of people who end up getting tangled up in their productions, it's just it's just weighed down with just this weird shame and weird demanding that it's one.
Keep it so closed off.
The primary difference between this guy who's doing it legitimately in Jane O'Brien media is kind of like the respect for the talent. And I think the example there is with this guy in Orlando. I wish I remembered his name. He's having these people come in. They're very aware of what they're doing it for, and I'm sure they're getting paid and compensated.
How
and all
public
of that.
It'll be.
Exactly. They're aware of it's going to be out there.
That's a weird element. I don't know if we want to spoil exactly how much this Jane O'Brien media thing, actually, the extent that they misuse this tickling footage and what they use it for.
The biggest thing that's almost pretty obvious is the idea that they're saying on the face of it that it's this competitive endurance tickling, as if it's this new sport, and having these young athletic people,
and paying them a lot of money.
A lot of money, often enough to get through college or get a new car. And she even sometimes targets low income areas. Just
like in Michigan. Was that Michigan?
So she'll know they'll be more desperate. And I guess that's the big difference. They think it's not going to be seen by many people. They are not really aware that it's even like for this fetish driven online.
It's not looking necessarily for talent in anyone who's genuinely interested in tickling. It's preying on people who are at a disadvantage.
Yes.
That, and we start to see some very various bullying, where some people will start to resist being involved in what they call a sport. And then we start to see there's public shaming involved, and
lives are basically getting ruined
because
they were in a tickling video.
Yeah,
and it's awful.
A lot of blackmail and fraud, and just a lot of stuff going on there. And maybe that's enough to say about the actual main thing going on with the movie, so you have context, when we're talking about it. But do you guys have any notes or feedback on choices in the filmmaking going on here?
Well, what I want to jump off with is, does this subject matter warrant a documentary, or would it have been better as an online, 30-minute news segment, or as a written article? What do you guys think?
I think that's an interesting question, because it's something I often ask when I'm watching a documentary too, and I've gotten to the point almost where I don't think it's about how much something warrants an entire movie. It's about how you shape it as a movie, because I mean, there's documentaries about someone just doing something very personal, and they can somehow make it an entire movie and it works, and then there's these people trying to take on these huge scoped investigation things, and it doesn't really work out. But I think this one's kind of finds its focus a little bit into the movie, and it looks like it's going to be much bigger than it is early on, but by the end it kind of finds a focus in it. I think it actually works as a movie pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. I think there could be an easy argument to say, yes, it could have just been a written piece or maybe an online video or something. But with this subject matter, I honestly think this may be kind of disrespectful, but I think it's better just to make it a documentary and get it out of the way. I wouldn't want it drawn out online or have to read a piece about it. I think with this subject matter, it's a lot easier just to watch it unfold and have it be over, I think.
Would it be... I don't know what issues you guys are going to raise about the movie, because I don't think we're all extremely positive on it. We might be leaning towards positive, but not extremely positive. The movie has a certain heavy style that is consistent throughout the movie, and I didn't dislike it per se, but I think if you had just a written article, it'd be much more factual, and not that the movie is incorrect, but it would be much more just laying out the facts as it goes, and we wouldn't have slow motion sequences, interesting cinematic quality to it.
A lot of the humor would be gone.
Right. So would it be better in that way if it were just not necessarily a list of facts, but a well-written list of facts?
See, I don't know. This could be considered a small nitpick or whatever, but a lot of the stylistic choices I just kind of played off as very this is your first documentary, right? I don't know, are you talking about things like the slow motion sequences, which I actually thought were in bad taste? Or also a lot of the landscape shots where there's 30, 45 seconds at a time where they're just shooting the city.
Both. What do you find in bad taste about the slow
I don't
motion?
know, because
describe it.
Well, the moment when they're in Orlando and they're talking to the guy who's doing it legitimately, and it's something he's actually fascinated with, he's welcomed them. It doesn't come off as in bad taste until they start doing these slow motion videos of the tickling. It kind of sheds a negative light on it. I kind of found.
I didn't think so.
Really,
well, that's one of my two major problems with the movie is that I never got the sense, especially in that moment, that it was trying to find an understanding in the tickling. I just found it as watch this guy get tickled.
He found it strange.
Is this not weird, or not just weird? I don't find it shaming the fetish. I find it just overtly curious about the fetish, and it's not trying to find, like I said, or trying to understand or sympathize with the tickling. It's just objectively look at this tickling. That's kind of a weird way to put it.
Well, see, I think it loses its objectivity when it starts doing slow motion scenes like that and cutting away to him making weird faces at it. I think that's
okay. I can see your point there.
I think if it was objective, it would have been more of just him actually, interviewing them while they're doing it and watching it as an actual the way he does it.
And I guess
in a film, if he's going to slow it, if he's going to slow the footage down, that's basically editorializing, right?
Exactly. And he's even playing music over it and everything. And I think that really just kind of played in a negative light to me.
Yeah.
So, okay. I can buy into that. Yeah.
I didn't feel the same way, but those are all valid points, and that's a way to interpret it.
I think the people he is encountering are mostly victims. I think that's the difference. The one guy that with the slow motion sequence, the guy in Orlando, that guy is not a victim. The guy in the video is not a victim.
He's very willing to do that. He's getting paid.
But the majority of people that are shown in this documentary are. They are people being exploited by Jane O'Brien media. So I think that's where kind of the shameful side comes in, which you could still like say like, okay, well, why did he make those
I
choices
feel
in that
like
one
they're being
scene?
exploited in the same instance by us looking at them as a curiosity.
Yeah.
I think this leads
Hard to
into.
avoid.
I thought that footage of the actual clips and videos that Jane O'Brien was producing, so the actual competitive tickling videos that are causing all of this trouble being shown, was always relevant. Like whenever, and I found it mostly as kind of like a counterpoint to whenever it seemed like Jane O'Brien or the team involved in defending Jane O'Brien were trying to say something about what they were doing. Often you'd come upon a clip of the tickling, and you can't deny that this weird insistence that it's not pornography basically is, well, for me it kept driving home that this is something is either they don't understand or refuse to acknowledge the nature of these videos, and it is pornography. And I think that you might embarrass some of the participants further by putting them in the movie and drawing more attention to them, but then you also need to educate anyone who might potentially be involved in these videos in the future that there are consequences for whatever you do. And even though no one gets naked and there's no actual sexual activity, or you'd say traditional sexual activity portrayed here, it is a fetish and it is pornography, and it will affect your life. And we talk a lot about victims. Actually, I think a lot of them are very naive, and they want the easy money, and they don't want the consequences that come with it, which is their association with tickling and the fetish, and their family knowing, and people being able to watch it. And it's I do feel sorry for some of them, and a lot of times it clearly does go too far. But you got to understand, if something sounds too good to be true.
Yeah, I mean,
I also imagine that everyone that's in a video that they show had the option to have an interview or comment on the film itself, because that's just, that's journalism. And there are a few interviews with people that were in the tickling videos, and they said they reached out to hundreds of people in videos, and they mostly declined.
Well, and a lot of them didn't want to, because it's just even further putting it out there that they were involved in this.
Right, but with the chance, you get a much more empathetic view of the people that they do have interviews with. Because, the one guy who was a football player, I thought he had a really...
Well,
that was a compelling story.
Yeah, it was. And just because, and what they need to understand, they just kind of need to have a sense of awareness here, and courage even, and not be so ashamed just because they're in these videos. And there is a sexual element, of course, for people that seek them out and watch them. That doesn't mean the performers are deriving any pleasure, or that there's anything inherent about the performers, because it's just like any pornography. The performers aren't enjoying the production the same way that the eventual consumer is. That's also naive of the consumer to just associate anyone in these videos as willing or understands the fetish completely.
I totally agree with that. And in an ideal progressive world, that's how everyone would look at it. But you got to think a lot of employers, just Googling these people and finding this, like if somebody was a coach at a school or something, that's an automatic, you cannot work here,
right? Just
for being even remotely involved in anything like that. And it's something that you could have done when you were 18 years old to help pay for your first semester of college.
Well, so that's my point towards you can't be naive in this world. That'd be just like, that's the consequence. If you're going to get handed $15,000 to get tickled by a few guys, you've got to consider all, like, why would anyone have to pay anyone these crazy amounts of money or buy them cars?
I don't see how. And, they even kind of asked them, and once you got there and realized you were being strapped down and being tickled and paid all this money for it, were you not like, and a lot of them just end up saying, at that point, I was just like, yeah, I'm kind of aware of what's happening, but I'm just going to hope it never gets out there. And
yeah, they wanted the money. If you want the money, you got to do what they're asking.
Still victims, though. Going into that area in Michigan and exploiting people that were impoverished, that's like straight up. That's how people get trapped into like pornography and sex trafficking.
Exactly. Right. I don't think it's as much. They become more of victims when they're trying to stop doing it and they're being blackmailed and their lives are being ruined because they did it. The people doing it and willing to do it and aware of, like, the down in Orlando. It's more of you're an actor, you're the talent.
Yeah.
They become victims more when they want to stop doing it, really, and they're being blackmailed and all that.
So I wish I'll talk about where I wish they had kind of gone into the tickling fetish a little more. If it had somehow developed a more interesting angle about it, because it goes into it a little bit, for whatever reason, like you said, Jody, because it's so stylized in that portion of the film that it's hard to tell what the film's trying to say about it.
Its purpose is kind of lost
right.
on these two different focuses on who's behind Jane O'Brien and what's up with this tickling stuff.
So it's a style choice, but I remember thinking back to a documentary I really enjoyed. It's called My Kid Could Paint That, and there's a narrative here about a child prodigy who may or may not actually be doing these paintings, and these filmmakers are invited into the house or somehow convince the family to let them live with the family so they can be around the kid and see how she does these paintings. And then you start getting this weird narrative about does the dad paint them, or does he force her to make these paintings, and what does that mean about the paintings? And then it also goes into, aside from this engrossing narrative that's kind of at the heart of the movie, it also has offshoots at relevant points where they talk about just art in general, just in case, because it's just, I guess, you are naturally interested in a deeper discussion about art because these questions are being raised. And so since the tickling fetish is just on screen for a lot of the time, and the videos are just there and played out in significant portions, that I had more questions about it, and maybe just hoped it would go into it a little bit more. And that left me kind of feeling unsatisfied. So as a $11, I'm going to go watch this in a movie theater type of experience, does it completely deliver? Not all the elements I wanted did not end up being there. You know,
my only way to counter that is, like, it already feels a little long. I think if it had been a movie more about tickling as a whole, we would have wanted the more linear narrative to latch onto. And he doesn't really find a good middle ground. He has like a few scenes with tickling that are about this whole tickling fetish, and then the majority of the narrative is trying to figure out who Jane O'Brien is and tracking that down. Yeah. So I don't know if you're right. I don't know if he finds kind of the middle ground for that. But I think it's overall interesting still.
Yeah.
Well,
go
ahead.
There were a few. If you were searching for things to cut out, I think there are a couple of moments that fall flat, like the moment where they're going to one of the studios, one of the sets, to kind of like storm it guerrilla style. That kind of fell flat to me. There's not a whole lot about that internet.
There was nothing to take from that other than they had found one of the studios.
The actual act of doing it was exciting for me. I'm not sure anything actually happens.
It's only exciting because we're, like, oh, what is about to happen?
What's about to happen?
But nothing comes of it, I think. And I think overall,
I honestly, I'm sorry, I'll cut you off.
You're fine. You're fine.
It's okay.
I think that's exemplary of my second biggest complaint about the movie, is that yes, it never finds a real focus, and I think the only purpose of this documentary, which doesn't mean it doesn't work or isn't warranted as being a documentary, but I think its only purpose is to expose the twists and turns and not give us a better understanding of anything that's kind of really going on. We get some reconciliation with the people behind all this. And we get, some insight into the victims, but overall, the movie is about this story.
I think
the movie is about uncovering the story.
I think it makes the movie pretty one-dimensional in that way, because that's the only thing it accomplishes.
Isn't that what investigative journalism is, though? I mean, like, there's pieces that are often much bigger.
Let's
obviously.
look at Spotlight.
I mean, that's huge.
That's investigative journalism, but this is a documentary, and I think.
But it's essentially an expose. It's essentially a long investigative journalism piece.
And yes, I would say it is, but does that mean it's good?
Does that mean it brings anything? I think it accomplishes it doing that.
It's
but I don't
exposing what it wants to, and I think that's what's interesting about it, and that's what they latch onto.
Well, I just think we're looking for things that obviously aren't there, and that's on us. But I think they're things that should be expected in a documentary. It's like you need to do more research and maybe find more people to talk to, or it's something. I'm not the director. I'm just saying.
So I'm not sure like what I'm not sure like what humanistic or metaphorical lens you guys like want to view this, because I think it's a very simple
I don't think the movie
I don't think it wants to be more than just exposing this Jane O'Brien media company for what it is. I don't think it's trying to get into why people are doing this.
I don't think it is either. I don't think it has to make some ideological statement.
But isn't
or something
that what
like that.
the argument you guys are making?
I'm thinking it could have.
I think it's one-dimensional. I mean, even just in every way, it proves one-dimensional to me. It's just about, to me, plays as this guy wanting to uncover these things, and even when he's interviewing these people dealing with these things, he never comes off as sincere to me, because he comes off like it's like he's always just digging for like some, oh really, that happened, or wow. It never comes off as.
But that does make the film entertaining and easy to watch.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I just think there's some flaw in that.
Maybe we're trying to point out specific things, but I think maybe it's one dimensional, and we would have been a little more satisfied if it had tried to go deep, give or seek a deeper understanding in any element of anything that's brought up here, right?
Yes.
And not necessarily tickling fetish, but you could, or pornography and how that targets impoverished performers who are at need to make money to live, or maybe there's all kinds of weird questions there. Do they need the money? Do they really need the money, or do they just want to have new things?
You don't read an investigative journalism piece, and I'm not saying this documentary is the exact same as like a long form written piece, but you don't read that searching for ideological answers.
Exactly, and that's what makes me think maybe this would have been better as that.
Okay.
What warrants it to be more than that, I think, is the fact that he decided to pick up a camera and shoot all of this and make an entire documentary.
Maybe it comes down to, why am I expecting these things? And I guess maybe that is what I look for in a documentary. Like The Act of Killing is a good example. We it's not just about these things that have happened in Indonesia and these mass killings, but it's a larger look at just humanity and whether that even exists.
And see, I think that's brutality. The thing. The difference between there is, like, if he had just showed up and shot all the stuff and told the story of what happened. Here, I think there were opportunities to go further with things like that. And I think it's kind of, like you said, it leaves some questions on the table. But, he accomplishes exactly what he set out to do.
Yeah. Right, I think that's the difference between...
This extended look at his investigative journalistic piece here.
Right, I think it's the difference between a great documentary and a good documentary that does what it wants to do. I'm not claiming this is a great documentary, but it's also, Steve James didn't set out to make Hoop Dreams thinking he's going to create a 3-hour movie about inner city life and the complications of growing up in the inner city. He wanted to make a 30-minute PBS special on two kids playing basketball.
What's Hoop Dreams?
Stop. He took that and made it a great documentary. I think here David Farrier is still making a very compelling piece of investigative journalism, and I think it's interesting, and it's worth what it is.
Yeah, and I think it's worth watching.
It kind of plays off as too orchestrated for me at times, or manufactured.
Well, there are the reenactments at the beginning.
That's the part that reminds me of like a news segments, though. Honestly, really bad news segments where they have poorly reenacted.
I would judge this
shots.
in a different light if I saw it as an hour-long television special than as if I saw it in a theater as a film. So
I did for me, it didn't seem too orchestrated necessarily. I thought you got a really neat balance of very slick cinema quality presentations and production in this documentary, and then you also have a lot of guerrilla style where they're knocking when there's a sequence where they're following someone in a car and they're trying to hide the cameras as they're getting closer to their subject, and so they're knocking cameras down and you're seeing the POV of the camera that gets knocked down. I love stuff like that. It's kind of like you get a sense of what it was like, and even the sequence we mentioned that doesn't quite work where they're trying to get into one of the studios to get some footage there. It is still neat. You get a sense of what they're going through to actually produce this. Maybe that comes off as orchestrated, but I enjoy seeing what they're actually having to go through, and it is in the service of making an entertaining movie or documentary or a piece of entertainment. But you do get that peak of what goes into a production like this, and oftentimes how you're at the mercy of what happens. They're just there, and hopefully to capture something.
See, and it might play off more as a representation of my personal taste with documentaries, but it's kind of a similar problem I have with something like a Michael Moore film. Is he's very much so a subject in his own movie because of how much he is digging for things, and I guess that's really not a fair criticism of this guy, because he is a subject in his own movie because he is the investigative journalist looking into these things.
Right.
If anything, the objective documentarian here is his friend, who you don't even actually hear speak in the movie. Or you do a little bit, I guess, in the background. But
I mean, you have to think basically it is like a news segment where he would be actively like they show clips of him doing his pop culture things, and he's actively participating in all of them.
Yeah.
And that's his style of journalism, and I think that's interesting.
Jody, do you think it was like self-indulgent or not necessarily? I didn't think so.
At times it kind of played off for me there.
Especially that tickling scene we were talking
especially
about.
that, some of the interviews with the people, when it just comes off kind of, like I said, like he's always looking for something and doesn't come off as like a sincere interview to me. And I guess
he's looking at for the more sensational type of aspects, maybe, or
he is a little antagonistic too. But
that's what I was thinking. Instead of looking when he's interviewing one of these people at sincerely how it affected them or something like that, he's asking them these questions to get these responses, and it's almost like he's looking right at the camera like, wow, did you hear that? Did you hear what he just said?
One of the really crappy Facebook posts where they interview a bunch of people and just put in the parts where they say something really stupid.
Yeah, that's kind of how it played off to me. But I think he is sincere at times too. I think he's not necessarily trying to make. I don't think he's victimizing these victims even more than they've already been. I don't mean that in that sort of light. But
I think to get down to the root of what Jody and I may have problems with, it really just comes down to what we might expect from a documentary and just how that contrasted with what we actually got, and that is our problem. But I mean,
I guess
we have our right to have our opinion, and
I guess I usually just go into documentaries like with the complete blank slate. I have no idea what I'm expecting.
We're not as open-minded as Reed.
Yeah, you guys are really narrow-minded. You're not into this whole tickling fetish thing.
Well, I took the movie for everything that it was. It wasn't until I got home and I sat down, I'm like, all right, I want to start thinking of things and actually think about the movie and things I want to talk about, because I knew I was going to be on the show. And it wasn't until then I came up with these questions that I never felt that got answered or that I felt satisfied with.
Probably a good wrapping up point.
Yeah, we should probably go ahead and do star ratings.
Do you want me to give mine first? I'm already hinting at it. I'll go for it.
Can we all recommend the movie? Or are we recommending
it? I still recommend it, yes.
Yes, I do too. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I like it too.
Yeah, I recommend it.
Something I don't like.
But of course, documentaries aren't always the most rewatchable things, but I think this one is especially not rewatchable, which of course hurts it for me. So I'd only say it's 2 out of 4.
I'm going 2.5.
I'm gonna go 3 out of 4.
Yeah, I'm going 2 out of 4 on this one.
2 out of 4.
Yeah, I guess it didn't really tickle my fancy.
He's had that one saved since 10 p.m. last night.
Yep.
All right, well,
I think that we only reviewed this movie because he had that saved up ahead of time, like 2 weeks ago.
I was either going to say it tickled my fancy if I liked it, or it didn't tickle my fancy.
It could go either way.
Oh, dear God.
All right, and we'll take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Now we're doing picks.
Soupy.
Real quick.
We've all got picks. We started out thinking that only some of us had picks, and now we all got picks, right? We all came up with something?
Yes.
Think so?
I've got a short one.
You can't resist the quick picks.
You can't resist the quick
You got to
picks.
come up with something. I saw Star Trek Into Darkness, which is the second of the new reboots of the Star Trek franchise.
Sabotage.
Sort of in preparation for Star Trek Beyond, which I haven't seen yet, but Into Darkness, pretty universally looked down upon after a successful reboot, but I thought Into Darkness was great.
I liked it when I saw it.
I thought it was a lot better than the first one's pretty forgettable, I thought.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah. Like, it has its moments, but it was a little mainstreamy for me. And Into Darkness has a lot more weird elements. It just feels like more like this needed to be made, whereas the other one, they just made it because I guess you make a Star Trek movie if you can, So I thought the chemistry with the ship's crew was better. I thought the villain was better. And I thought the story was better. I just thought everything was better. And of course, the first minute of the movie, they get their CGI monster out of the way, and you don't have to look at any more of them. So I was loving that. Like,
I'm just imagining the tagline for the movie Star Trek Into Darkness. Everything's better.
It's just like, so I'm fascinated that the reactions were like, actually, I think some of the things I saw were like, oh, it's just more of the same, or this is not as good as the reintroduction that we had a couple years ago.
I feel like a lot of people think it's like too dark for a Star Trek film, right?
Man, I thought it was great.
I like that opening sequence on that planet with all the red leaves or whatever.
Yeah,
I thought that was really pretty.
Yeah, I think like all the alien life they have in it was like more organically there than it seemed like in the first one. Anytime they could show you an alien that looked weird, it's just here you go. And this one is like, well, they're on a planet where these people are indigenous to it, and so it made more sense. Of course, there are those moments like when they cut to a weird looking person on the ship, but I don't know. It just felt like it was it felt like a better movie, just like you said, Reed. It's just everything's better, and I think so. That just
I haven't even seen it.
That just you should.
We've talked about
I'm
this
recommending
so much,
it
Jody.
to you.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna watch it. I just think it's funny that you quoted me quoting you.
Honestly, I can get how people would say it's more of the same, because I actually think the first one's really good too. And then
it's okay.
I remember thinking this one was really good as well.
Didn't you give the first one? Wasn't it your pick a few weeks ago?
Yeah.
A while back? Okay.
Yeah. So that's my pick. Star Trek.
Into Darkness.
Into Darkness.
Right. Again Into Darkness. That's the name. Star Trek Again Into Darkness.
Well,
Star Trek again.
We're gonna keep it sci-fi in here. I have my pick is Interstellar. I saw it for the second time a couple nights ago. I originally saw it in IMAX in 2014 when it was released. I gave it a 4.5 when I first saw it, and gave it a pretty favorable review. I was actually pretty compelled by it the first time I saw it.
I read your review.
Yeah, I was very happy with it, and I found it to be a very deep film, and I still do find a lot of depth in the story and a lot of emotion within it, and it's a very, very well made and visually complete movie, and I like it's very different in its editing style from, I wouldn't say The Dark Knight. It still has it's very fluid, and it has that rhythmic pattern that he usually sticks to, but it just felt a lot more atmospheric than those movies. But I dropped it a half a star on this watch to a 4, because when I first saw it, I didn't really pay as much attention to a lot of the dialogue as I did this time, and the movie really is explaining itself a lot. It spends a lot of time going over the science and what's actually happening, which with a movie with such complicated like physics and theory, yeah, it's going to be hard not to write a lot of that in there and try to keep your audience, your lesser...
it's trying to keep away the people, the critics who are just waiting to like tear down the science of it or something.
Yeah, like Neil deGrasse Tyson still gave it had some problems with it. But anyway, it's... What? I thought
anytime his name is said, it's just hilarious.
That guy. Like, when doesn't he have a problem with science and something, right, guys?
No, and I don't care
right?
what he honestly. That
I'm
guy,
just like wondering why.
I love Neil deGrasse Tyson, but anytime he talks about art, he is just out of his league.
I know. I'm like, why is he commenting on it?
Yeah, no, he has. And look, and I don't care about the science in this movie. I'm not that. I don't scrutinize it that much.
It's very ambitious.
We watched Solaris recently, and Solaris is a very quiet movie. It's never over-explaining its territory and what's actually happening.
The best movies about science aren't trying to over-explain the science. I mean, Solaris, 2001. I mean, just...
The list goes on.
Those are the only two.
Eraserhead.
No, those are the only two.
Planet of the Apes.
Okay, shut up, Reed. So yeah, that really... It showed a lack of self-confidence in the screenplay and the actual direction. It showed me that they weren't confident they could visually communicate, and they weren't confident in their audience being able to keep up, when I think this really could have been a fantastic, like, actual visual piece and work of art when it really gave out on me on this watch with all the dialogue. It was very disappointing.
I'm just saying, let me do a cut of that movie, and I'm gonna make it work.
No, I would say the same thing. I would just cut out a lot of the talking.
Honestly. All I seem to remember is kind of the visuals, though. So I guess you could say it's successful in that.
Oh no,
way.
exactly. It's very successful.
That's the same thing. Same with Inception. Like people complain about the dialogue in Inception. All I remember is the visuals.
It's one of those things where I think the great things in the movie really overshadow the things that aren't so great.
Yeah.
For me personally,
there are literally moments where they stop and have a conversation, and the dialogue is, I think, one could say Sorkin-esque. They don't speak like actual human beings. They speak like very metaphorically, and they use these analogies. And I'm just like, can you all like stop, please?
I think that can work,
like the Murphy's Law thing. Just
but
got
in
on my
terms
nerves.
of Interstellar, I don't think it does.
What do you mean? You don't think what could work?
I think the kind of dialogue that doesn't sound like a real human being can work.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
but not in that movie when it's
no,
supposed to be like real. It's quote unquote kind of realistic in a way. I mean, I'm not saying it's neo-realistic. It's.
I guess The Martian is one where they kind of... I mean, I don't know everyone's feelings on The Martian, but I liked it. You don't like it?
No, but I think
it's one that explains the science well and doesn't over-explain it, I think.
Yes.
I think it
gets
a lot of its points
across
across
his
without...
tone. That's its tone. Whereas Interstellar has this atmospheric tone, but then it stops and explains everything, and it just it's different.
I actually liked those, and you're right. They are like definitive breaks where they stop and have a discussion. I enjoyed that in Interstellar. Of course, I've only seen it once. I'm not critically academically like watched it a second time, so I'm kind of scared now.
What do you think? You enjoyed it because the science is cool? Because I think the science is cool.
Yeah.
But as a movie, I'm just like, I wish it wouldn't.
Well, see, I think there's some really awesome visual things going on, and I think there's even a lot of emotional things done very well with the movie. I think Matthew McConaughey is really good.
Honestly, I love the end sequence, the 2001-esque end sequence. Yeah. Really, I think that works really well, which is impressive.
You're talking to me.
It's on that he can do that because we've seen it many times, or at least one really good time in 2001. That he can pull that off is just incredible, and the whole score, I love it. It's best. The Hans Zimmer's best score, absolutely. I think it's incredible. All right.
It's Interstellar is weirdly overrated and underrated at the
same
time.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Like the mass.
The common
audience.
moviegoer is like, this is the greatest movie I've ever seen, and I'm like, you need to tone it down.
Or go see.
Critics are like, I think, almost too hard on it sometimes. Yeah. So I think like there's some good middle ground.
I mean, it is an extremely ambitious movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, Christopher Nolan's an extremely ambitious filmmaker, and I think it succeeds on a lot of levels. Maybe not all of them.
I could see myself talking it up on my list of favorite Nolan films. It doesn't touch something.
I hate to drag this on, but I think one of my biggest complaints is the end, is where we're getting a lot of this information about what's actually happening, and what there are these entities in the movie and whatnot. But anyway, there's the cornfields are on fire, and Topher Grace is outside of the house trying to tell Jessica Chastain's character when she's like trying to decode this message she's getting. And they constantly cut to Topher Grace out in the field like, hurry, he's coming! And then like they cut back to her, and then they cut back to McConaughey, and then they cut back to him, hurry! The fire's out! And I'm just...
Topher Grace is in Interstellar?
Yeah, he's just like this mathematician guy. Or he's no, I think he's with like... He's a doctor of some sort. He's taking care of the family because they have a cough because all the dust and on the earth.
I'll tell you something amazing about Interstellar that it doesn't have. It doesn't have some scene where Donald Glover wakes up spilling his coffee and he's figured it all out.
All right. We don't have to rag on The Martian. I was just
sorry. That was for you, Kent.
Mostly what I remember is being underwhelmed by Casey Affleck, though, because I'm a self-proclaimed big Casey Affleck fan.
He was a little too brutish.
They don't give him anything. Like they're just like, hey, sit here and look kind of like upset the whole time.
Look contemplative.
Yeah, the whole time.
Touch your chin.
Yeah.
No, I'm just
grow a little bit of stubble.
Yeah.
Basically,
I'm done. A little shameless self-promotion. My latest short film, The Human. I have a Facebook page for it. Please go like it and share my trailer, which you will see on the page. I have entered it into 5 festivals so far, 2 of which are South by Southwest and Slam Dance, the most popular ones I've entered it in so far. I'm waiting until towards the end of the year when they open back up. I love my movie. I think it turned out really well. Check out the trailer, share it, like I said, and I'll keep you all posted on it.
Yeah, and we'll share that on the Burn After Watching Facebook page and a link to it in the podcast notes.
And you know what? He said to share his trailer, but I tell you what, you should even watch the trailer.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Watch and then share it. If you don't like it, don't share it.
Reed and I have seen the finished film,
yeah,
and we can both vouch for it.
Oh, congratulations!
They helped me on it. They're in the credits.
Yeah,
and I have a really good IMDb page for it, so check that out too.
Yeah.
Cool. Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Regardless, it will be on Vimeo if it doesn't get accepted, and I'm going to be happy with it regardless. I think
cool.
If the festivals don't pick it up, then they don't get it, and that's fine with me. I'm done.
Just be careful. Sometimes it's all who you know. So it's not. That's not any reflection on the quality.
That's true.
That's
true.
I'm just saying, Jody. He's
It
giving
is
me
true.
the big eyes. Like, have I said too much?
No.
It's all who you know.
I'm right there with you.
Okay.
All right, so I'll do my pick really quick, and mine is also a plug for a movie and a plug for myself. Not in the way you did it.
Oh, okay.
Hunt for the Wilderpeople is a new movie by Taika Waititi that's out. He's the director of Eagle vs. Shark and What We Do in the Shadows, and another one called Boy that I have not yet watched. It's on Netflix. But Hunt for the Wilderpeople is in theaters now. I saw it the other night, and I'd say I loved it, honestly. I think it's hilarious. It's some of the hardest I've laughed this year. Although I say that all the time, I feel like. But
Hail Caesar.
I know. Well, I said some of the hardest. You brought it up, not me. It's really enjoyable and heartfelt, and it's just a really, really good film. And I wrote a review for it. It'll be up on the site probably next day or two.
Yeah.
Whenever you hear this podcast, it'll be up there.
Yes, and I haven't seen it yet. I'm really excited. I'm going to see it after we record this show, so we might need to
wrap it up.
Hurry it. I'm just kidding. I just wanted to do a gag. Just wanted to do a quick little gag.
He's doing a gag. That's okay.
What's the point of doing a show if you're not going to throw a couple gags in there?
Yeah, that's true. We got plenty of gags.
All right. So that's all for our picks of the week.
Did you even give a pick?
No.
Jody doesn't have a pick?
For the sake of time. It looks like next week it could change, but we may possibly be discussing Captain Fantastic film that's coming out. It was at Cannes in Sundance, so pretty excited to talk about that. And we might be having 2 guests on to talk about it with us. I think we might be having Trey on, who always comes on when Reed's gone, of course, because Reed will not be here next week.
So you guys are recording on Monday then? Also
going to have Lydia. All right, and we're going to do a feedback segment here real quick because we actually have some listener feedback. So, Reed, this is your this is your show, man. This is your thing. This
from the top 5 episode. Was there a YouTube comment?
There's also we also have a presence on YouTube now, and there's a comment on our Neon Demon review.
Okay, well I'll read this one from Melissa, one of our chief commenters. She said, "Well, I've been convinced to watch Zootopia after avoiding animated films for a while." So I guess we can shout out to Kent for that.
Okay.
Also, Midnight Special is still on my list. It sounds amazing for us sci-fi nerds. I guess she hasn't gotten around to that yet. You guys are super entertaining as always. Also, Hail Caesar was so much fun and really fascinating. I absolutely loved it. Spot on for number 1. I forgot who said this is number 1, but whoever did was right.
How could she forget?
I don't know, man. But Melissa, that was me, Reed, who said that was my number 1.
Isn't there another comment on there?
There is, but it's you, so I'm not going to read it.
Just read it.
Harrison just kind of said we're idiots for not having Green Room as our number 1.
That's all I have to say.
Which is fair.
after seeing it again.
After seeing it again.
Yeah, but yeah, thanks, Melissa, for the comment. Mark, do you have one on the YouTube?
Yeah, it's real quick. Comment on YouTube is from Pizza Sliced Movie Reviews.
Oh.
It says, "Enjoyed listening to your podcast. Top work, guys." And then you put a smiley face.
Ooh,
are they
love
trying to
that
recruit
smiley
me?
face.
Is that what they're doing?
What?
Are they wanting to recruit me?
You weren't on that episode. So.
I like pizza, and I like movies, and I like reviews. You put those things together. All right.
Oh, don't make jokes about that. You're so zoomed out, like I wouldn't be able to tell when it stopped. All right.
I can tell.
That makes me nervous.
I can tell when it stops.
Goodbyes.
All right, so that's all for our show today. Thanks for listening. Make sure you check out the website, burnafterwatching.com. Email us at burnafterwatchingpodcast@gmail.com. Check out the Twitter, the Facebook, and now we even have a YouTube page, as Mark mentioned a moment ago.
Yes, if you like to watch things while you listen to things.
We have some stills.
Check it out there.
And, links to the show.
Yeah, be sure to tweet about us.
Big thanks to our commenters. And a big thanks to our listeners.
We love the feedback.
We love it.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure you tune in next week.
See you.
Bye.
Isn't it weird how like people are afraid to describe their dreams because they're so weird, but everyone has weird dreams?
Guys,
it felt so real.
I signed on to talk about a movie.
Oh. You don't want to just do. You're not part of the Doing Life podcast with Mark and Reed.
Doing life.
Let's get a nice clean edit point here.
Jody's having a heart attack over in the corner.
All right.
Okay. So do we have a clip from Tickled?
Here's a clip. I'm just kidding.
We could just tickle somebody here.